The bustling city of Lagos had always been a place of energy and promise. But for Omar, it often felt like a maze of overwhelming crowds and endless distractions. Omar had always been the type of person who kept to himself, preferring the quiet moments when he could retreat into his thoughts. He worked as a graphic designer for a local advertising agency, spending most of his days behind a computer screen, creating designs that represented other people's ideas. One evening, after a long day of work, Omar decided to visit a local art gallery to unwind. He wasn't one to frequent galleries, but something about the calm atmosphere of the space always gave him a sense of peace. He walked through the doors, his mind already lost in thoughts of color, palettes, and design concepts. That's when he first saw Jamal. Jamal stood near one of the exhibit walls, his eyes scanning a painting with such intensity that it almost seemed as if he were absorbing the very essence of the artwork. Omar was drawn to him immediately, not just because of his striking presence, tall, with a confident posture and a charming smile, but because of the way he appreciated the art with such sincerity. He had a warmth about him that made people feel at ease. That one's a masterpiece, Jamal said, his deep voice cutting through the silence. Omar wasn't sure if the comment was directed at him or just a passing observation, but something about the way Jamal said it intrigued him. Omar didn't know much about art, but he figured it was a safe topic to start a conversation. Do you come here often? Omar asked, walking up to him. Jamal turned his head, his smile instantly forming, a bit surprised at the question, but not in a bad way. I try to. Art's my escape, you know. It's a nice place to just think. I'm Jamal, by the way. Omar, he replied, extending his hand. They shook hands, and an easy rapport developed between them almost immediately. It turned out that they shared a love for art, though Omar was more of an observer and Jamal was an enthusiast. Over the next hour, they wandered through the gallery together, discussing paintings, photography, and even the architecture of the space. It felt natural, effortless, and Omar found himself laughing at Jamal's witty commentary on certain pieces. Before they knew it, the gallery was closing for the night, and the two of them stood outside under the dimming streetlights, still talking about their favorite pieces and the way art could evoke such strong emotions. They didn't realize how much time had passed. You know, I don't normally talk to strangers like this, Omar admitted, slightly embarrassed. Jamal chuckled, his smile genuine. Neither do I, but there's something about you that feels familiar, like we've known each other longer than just tonight. Omar felt a warm flush of recognition, not from Jamal's comment, but from something deeper. There was an ease between them that he rarely experienced with others. It wasn't forced and it wasn't awkward. It just was. You're right, Omar replied, feeling the weight of the moment. It's funny how you can meet someone for the first time and instantly feel like you've known them forever. Jamal gave him a thoughtful look. Maybe it's just a good conversation, he said. But either way, it was nice meeting you, Omar. We should do this again sometime. There's always something new to discover in art, after all. Omar smiled, feeling a sense of hope he hadn't realized he'd been missing. I'd like that. From that night on, they kept in touch, meeting at least once a week to visit the gallery or grab coffee at one of the cozy spots around the city. Their friendship grew, not just because of their shared love for art, but because they were able to talk about anything: life, dreams, struggles, things that Omar had never shared so openly with anyone before. Jamal's laughter became a constant source of joy for Omar, and the way Jamal looked at him with such understanding made Omar feel seen in a way he hadn't experienced in a long time. For Jamal, it was Omar's calm nature that drew him in. While he was more outgoing and spontaneous, he felt a strange sense of peace when he was with Omar. There was something about his quiet presence that balanced Jamal's often chaotic energy. Their friendship was uncomplicated. There were no pretensions, no need for words that weren't necessary. It was simple yet profound, and each time they met, it seemed like the bond between them grew stronger. One evening, as they sat in a dimly lit cafe, Omar found himself sharing something he had never spoken about before: the difficulty he had in expressing his emotions. Jamal listened without interruption, nodding understandingly as Omar spoke. He had always been the type to bottle up his feelings, not wanting to burden others with his inner struggles. But somehow, with Jamal, it felt easy. You know, Jamal said after a long pause, it's okay to let people in. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. Life's hard, but it's not meant to be lived alone. Omar looked at him, the sincerity in Jamal's voice echoing in his heart. He had never been more grateful for a friend, for someone who could see him, not just the surface, but the parts he kept hidden from the world. He didn't know it yet, but this conversation would be the beginning of something deeper than he ever expected. As weeks turned into months, Omar and Jamal's bond grew stronger. What had started as casual meetups to admire art and chat over coffee had evolved into something much more meaningful. They began to share more personal stories, their hopes for the future, and their struggles. Omar, who had always kept his emotions close to his chest, found himself opening up to Jamal in ways he hadn't with anyone before. Jamal was different from the people Omar had known. He wasn't just interested in surface level small talk. He wanted to know what made Omar tick. There were times when they would sit for hours in a cafe talking about life and still feel like they hadn't said enough. Omar found himself looking forward to these moments more and more. When they weren't together, he would think about the way Jamal's laughter made his heart feel lighter, or how his deep voice brought a strange sense of calm to his chaotic mind. And at first, he dismissed these thoughts, chalking them up to the comfort of a close friendship. But as time passed, it became harder to ignore the fluttering in his chest whenever Jamal was near. One evening, they decided to take a walk through one of Lagos's busy districts. The neon lights of the city were bright against the night sky, casting a soft glow on the streets below. Jamal was animated, talking about an art show that was coming up, his hands gesturing enthusiastically as he spoke. Omar smiled, listening intently. It wasn't often he saw Jamal so excited, and it made him feel connected to the passion that defined Jamal's character. As they walked, they passed by a quiet park, the sounds of the city fading into the background. Jamal suddenly slowed down, his gaze turning thoughtful. Omar noticed the shift in the energy around them, as if Jamal had something important to say, but was unsure of how to express it. You know, Jamal began, his voice a little softer than usual. I've been thinking a lot lately about us. Omar's heart skipped a beat. He had been waiting for this moment in some way, but he wasn't sure how to respond. They had shared so much over the past few months, Yet there was an unspoken tension between them, a connection that neither of them had fully explored. What do you mean? Omar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jamal stopped walking and turned to face him. There was something vulnerable in his eyes, something Omar hadn't seen before. It made him feel both nervous and protective at the same time. I don't know how to say this, Jamal said, running a hand through his hair. But I've been feeling, I don't know. I think about you all the time, Omar. It's more than just friendship for me. I just don't know what to do with these feelings. Omar's breath caught in his throat. For a moment, the world around him seemed to freeze. He had always known there was something different between them, something deeper than just a bond of friendship. But hearing Jamal admit it out loud made his heart race. I don't know what to say either, Omar replied, his voice shaky. I felt it too, Jamal. There's something about you that makes me want to be closer, but I'm scared. I don't know how to deal with these feelings. I've never been good at this kind of thing. Jamal smiled, the kind of smile that was both reassuring and understanding. I get it, he said softly. I've never done this before either, but I don't want to lose what we have. I just want to see where this goes, to be honest with you. Omar took a deep breath, his mind racing. The fear he had felt earlier melted away as he looked at Jamal's face, so sincere, so open. He had never seen Jamal this vulnerable, and it made his heart swell with warmth. It was like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders, as if he no longer had to pretend that nothing was happening between them. I'm not ready to rush into anything, Omar said quietly, stepping closer to Jamal. But I don't want to ignore what's here either. Jamal nodded, his eyes shining with relief. I can wait. We can take this slow. I just don't want to hide it anymore. They stood there for a moment, looking at each other in silence, the tension between them almost palpable. Omar could feel his heartbeat in his chest, and the closeness of Jamal's presence made him feel alive in a way he had never experienced before. Without thinking, Omar reached out and placed his hand on Jamal's arm. It was a simple gesture, but it meant more than words could say. Jamal's gaze softened, and for the first time, Omar allowed himself to fully acknowledge the attraction he had been trying to suppress. The chemistry between them was undeniable. I don't know where this will go, Omar said quietly, but I'm willing to see where it leads. Jamal smiled, the tension between them easing as he gently squeezed Omar's hand. Me too? As they continued walking, the city around them seemed to fade into the background, the only thing that mattered being the connection that had grown between them. They both knew things were about to change, but neither of them felt scared anymore. Instead, there was a sense of anticipation, a shared understanding that what was beginning between them was something worth exploring. The night ended with an unspoken promise to see where this new chapter of their lives would take them, to let their friendship blossom into something deeper and more meaningful. The days following that evening in the park were filled with a new sense of clarity for Omar and Jamal. Though they hadn't explicitly labeled their relationship, there was an unspoken understanding that something had shifted between them. They continued to meet, to talk, but now there was an underlying layer of vulnerability and tenderness that hadn't been there before. The city of Lagos, once overwhelming and chaotic for Omar, now seemed a little softer when he was with Jamal. Their conversations became more intimate, and every moment they spent together felt more significant. Jamal was still the same warm, funny, and passionate person he had been when they first met. But now Omar saw him through a different lens. He noticed the way Jamal's smile made his heart skip, or how the way Jamal looked at him sometimes made Omar feel as if he were the only person in the world. And Jamal, he seemed more at ease, more open, his once playful energy now tinged with a quiet intimacy that mirrored Omar's feelings. One evening, after a long week of work, they decided to meet at a quiet rooftop bar overlooking the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the skyline, and the air was warm, but not too hot. Omar, in his usual quiet way, simply enjoyed being near Jamal. He didn't need to fill the silence with words. Sometimes just being in the same space was enough. Jamal, on the other hand, seemed restless. His eyes kept flicking toward Omar, and after a few moments of hesitation, he finally spoke. You know, I've been thinking, Jamal said, his voice gentle, almost hesitant. We've both been through a lot, and I know this might be a little sudden, but I need to ask you something. Omar looked up, his brow furrowing slightly. What's on your mind? Jamal paused, clearly gathering his thoughts. We've talked about a lot of things, our past, our dreams, what we want from life, but there's something I haven't asked yet. He took a deep breath, his hand brushing against Omar's as if seeking reassurance. How do you feel about us? About me? I know we're taking this slow and I'm not rushing anything, but I want to know where you stand. Omar felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't realized how much he had been holding back until now. And in that moment, everything became clear. It was as if the veil had been lifted and he could see, truly see, the possibility of a future with Jamal. I've been scared, Omar admitted, his voice quiet but steady. Hey, I've never felt this way about anyone before, and I didn't know what to do with it. But now, I think I understand. I've been falling for you, Jamal. Jamal's eyes widened, and for a brief moment, the world around them seemed to stand still. Omar's heart raced, his pulse quickening as he waited for Jamal's reaction. Jamal smiled, a smile so genuine that it made Omar's heart swell. He reached out, cupping Omar's face gently in his hands, as if trying to memorize the feeling of the moment. I've been falling for you too, Omar. You don't have to be scared. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Without another word, Jamal leaned in, his lips meeting Omar's in a kiss that was soft at first, tentative, as if they were both testing the waters. But soon it deepened, and Omar felt his heart leap in his chest, the kiss full of the unspoken emotions they had been holding onto for so long. The kiss was their confession, their promise to each other that no matter what, they would be there together. When they pulled away, both breathless, Omar couldn't help but smile. He had never felt so right in someone's arms, as if everything he had ever needed had been right here in Jamal. I don't know what the future holds, Omar said, his voice filled with tenderness. But I know I want you in it. Jamal's smile never wavered. And you'll have me. We'll take this one step at a time together. From that night on, their relationship blossomed. They still met at the gallery, still talked about art, still enjoyed quiet moments together. But now there was a deeper understanding between them. They were no longer just friends, they were something more. They supported each other through their individual struggles, but also celebrated their shared victories. Whether it was a successful art show, a promotion at work, or just a quiet evening spent laughing over dinner, they found joy in each other's company. Their connection only grew stronger as time passed. They spent weekends exploring the city, trying new foods, and simply enjoying each other's presence. It wasn't always perfect. There were moments of doubt, of fear, of wondering if they were doing the right thing, but they faced it all together, knowing that their love was built on trust, respect, and a deep emotional connection. One day, as they walked hand in hand through the streets of Lagos, Jamal stopped and turned to face Omar. His expression was serious, his eyes filled with intensity. "I've never been happier than I am with you, Omar," Jamal said, his voice steady. "I know this is just the beginning, but I want you to know that I'm all in. I want a future with you." Omar smiled, his heart full. "I feel the same way." And with that, they continued walking, the city stretching out before them, but no longer overwhelming. Together, they knew they could face anything,